Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And my guest today is an expert in health, fitness, nutrition, and more. His name is Justin McClintock. He is the founder and owner of Feel Strong Fitness, who specializes in fitness, body composition, pain relief, and general health. He is passionate about helping people achieve their goals on their own terms. Justin's attention, empathy, and deep technical knowledge allow him to create individually designed programs specific to each of his clients' needs. He is also the host of the Feel Strong Fitness podcast, which is about fitness, training, coaching, nutrition, and more with experts in their field. Justin, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you on the show and to talk to you again. Full disclosure for the audience, I was a guest on Justin's show, and we really had quite the connection because our styles, our belief systems are really in alignment with each other. So tell us about Feel Strong Fitness. Tell us why and how you started it, and then tell us about your philosophy about health, fitness, and training. So I know that was a lot.
I can do it. Let's do it from the top. About
Okay.
Feel Strong Fitness. So Feel Strong Fitness is committed to individual solutions. Everything we do is one-on-one. Everything we do is custom designed for a single individual. So we spend a lot of time assessing someone's needs, talking to people, learning about their goals, their history, all of that, so we can design a program that will get them where they want to go and beyond. We want to meet people's goals, but also set them up for success in the future. We believe that freedom is the ability to say yes to whatever you want, whenever you want. So creating that longevity, durability, resilience, strength. So if your goals change, you're still really set up to succeed in whatever you're doing. So that's what Feel Strong Fitness is, or certainly attempts to be. And I created it out of a little bit of frustration with the fitness world. I mean, there's lots of coaches and personal trainers out there, but I felt that the group fitness scene was not serving its people particularly well and was more entertainment than really results in a pretty significant way, which is fun sometimes, but not as the only thing one is doing. And a lot of personal trainers were recycling templates, kind of putting people through the same, 5 sessions over and over and over again, and not really taking them anywhere, and also putting their goals on people. It deeply frustrates me when someone walks into a gym and a trainer assumes they want to lose weight, or assumes they want biceps, or assume whatever that thing is that the trainer is putting on them, instead of taking a moment, recognizing you have a human being in front of you and collecting some of that information. So then you can take someone, to that place that they actually want to go and will be really satisfying.
I think that's why a lot of people either bail out or they quit, because it's like a cookie cutter template, just like you said. And we want to be treated like individuals. We don't want to do the same thing. Everybody is different in our goals, and certainly in our body types and our past experiences, not only with fitness, but injuries, something like that. So you do also work with people who may have been injured or who do have pain, but want to try and get into shape. So how does that work for you? How does that look?
This is really my passion for the past several years. And I talk about it as people who have had a significant setback. So perhaps it's chronic pain, perhaps it's an injury, perhaps it's you sort of fell out of fitness. I have a fair amount of clients who were significantly active, fit, maybe they were athletes or something like that. And life, career, COVID, kids, a bunch of things happened in the past 10 years. They're ready to get back to it, but they don't quite see their way in, and what used to work doesn't work anymore. So that's where I spend a lot of time. And I found that the key is really, it's really at the beginning. It's really learning as much as you can about the person. It's very tempting to be liked and satisfy people as quickly as possible. Someone shows up and they're like, my back hurts. I'm like, no problem. I have the perfect program for you. But I can't. I haven't watched you move. I don't know anything about your history. Like it's a little silly. So taking time through conversation, and then truthfully, often like a couple of weeks of watching them move and putting them through different tests to collect a ton of information. Now I can build a really, really specific and effective program that's actually going to get the results they want. layered onto that, when you learn about someone, you
Mhm.
learn the things they like. So
Mhm.
why not? I often talk about providing wins in every session. So
Mhm.
perhaps, let's say something happened and you showed up and you're like, my lower back has been hurting for 6 weeks and it's just not getting better. I've tried everything.
Mhm.
We're going to do an assessment. We're going to do some work. We are going to prioritize your back, but we're
Mhm.
also going to find some things that you enjoy doing, like a little bit of
Mhm.
satisfaction and a little bit of,
Mhm.
endorphins and things like that. It's not for novelty. We're going to make sure that this is part of your bigger
Mhm.
goal, but maybe we're working on agility. Maybe we're working on flexibility. Maybe, like for yourself, maybe we're working on punching power, but we're going to do it
Mhm.
in a very particular way that's not going to aggravate your back while
Mhm.
we do this maybe kind of boring, not sexy back rehab that we need to do.
Mhm. Mhm. So basically, you are setting your clients up for success, not failure. And before you can elaborate on that, I love the way you said they may have, like they fell out of fitness.
Yeah.
And that is such a wonderful way of putting it because it's not judgmental. And a lot of times life does get in the way. And, we can't sometimes spend, an hour 3 times or 4 times a week at the gym. And maybe some of us don't like doing that, but we want to still be healthy and fit. And then, of course, we've got these nagging little aches and pains. So the fact that you're able to sit down and, assess that and have that conversation with your client really makes you stand out in your field.
Thank you. And to that point, I think it's actually harder for people. I have found it anecdotally harder for people who used to be able to go to the gym for an hour or
Mm,
two, 4 or 5 times a week,
mhm,
and now they can't, and they probably shouldn't because it would be too
mhm.
much stress. They would be setting themselves up for injury or something potentially catastrophic. But they're comparing everything they're doing now to them 25 years ago, and
Oh,
they're running a race against someone who doesn't even exist, and therefore you
mhm,
can't possibly win. And there's a ton
mhm,
of mindset work that goes into creating someone like that, creating a program for someone like that to be really successful and to feel good about it. These are the people
mhm,
who you look at them and you're like, oh, well, you're in amazing shape and you do really well and you're super fit and you're happy all the time. Yeah, spoiler alert, they're not. They're really
mhm,
unhappy with their situation because they're comparing themselves to when they were 19.
mhm. Well, that's really not a very effective way of approaching it, is it?
No, it's super scarcity mindset and it's putting
Mhm,
themselves in a prison entirely
mhm,
of their own creation.
mhm,
Like not being willing. That's why we always assess and reassess. I'm
mhm,
interested in who you are right now.
mhm.
This is where we are. Let's start here and then we can go somewhere.
I'm glad you said that because it's like, look at where you are right now. We're different. We continue to change every single day. I mean, I'm not the same person in 10 minutes that I was 10 minutes ago because we are a dynamic system. We're always changing. It could be something simple like, either a rush of adrenaline or a hormone change, or you eat something that doesn't agree with you, or your mood swings. I mean, there's so much to it. It's not just let's go to the gym or to my own basement where I've got to, work out and do those weights and stuff. There's so much more that goes into it. And the mindset is so important. So when you get somebody like that who's still looking back in the past and well, I used to do this and I want to do it again, even though that was 30 years ago, how do you help them change their mindset and their focus on, what they could do instead of what they feel they should do?
Carefully and with a lot of empathy. If
Mm,
you can't tell someone, well, that person, you're not 19 anymore, you're going to have to like suck it up. And this is just what happens with aging. Because I also don't believe that's true. We could
mhm,
potentially, I'll always leave the door open. Oh, this
mhm,
was my best mile time was this when I was 22. Fantastic. How much have we been running lately? Well, not very much. Okay.
mhm,
Do we feel healthy, strong, mobile? Oh, yeah, actually, I feel pretty good. Then currently, as of now, I have no reason to think you can't beat that time. Now,
mhm,
I don't know, but we can
mhm,
test and assess and figure out what's going on right now. Let's get better tomorrow than we were today, because that's
mhm,
definitely the road in that direction.
mhm,
And on the way, maybe we'll find some interesting things out. Maybe your goals will change. Often people
mhm,
are chasing these kind of older goals,
mhm,
which is it tends to be wrapped up into I felt the best, or I remember feeling so confident when I was
mhm,
fill in the blank. And that can
mhm,
be very dangerous if it's tied to like a number on the scale, right?
mm,
Like I was so confident and sexy and strong and the happiest I've ever been when I was whatever your number is.
mhm,
And unpacking that a little bit and realizing that it's, oh, well, if you want to feel confident and sexy and strong. What if we could do that without changing the number on the scale? Would
Mhm.
you be down for that plan?
Mhm.
And 8 out of 10 people say, "Oh, well, yeah, that's what I want. I want to feel awesome and amazing. And if we can do that, like let's do that." And the other two people we don't work with.
Mhm. So 8 out of 10 would say, "Oh, yeah, okay." And it's almost like, did they give you the reaction like, "I never even thought of that before?"
Yes, because it's a lot of digging. When someone
Mm.
says, I want to weigh whatever 150 pounds.
Mhm.
Okay, how come? Well,
Mhm.
because I'm a little overweight. Okay, what is 150 pounds? What does that change? How much overweight are
Mhm.
you? Then we start digging like why,
Mhm.
and honestly keep asking that question over and over again. Okay, why? What would that mean to you? Okay, and you
Mhm.
dig in. Oh, well, I want to fit into these pants. Okay, fine.
Mhm.
What would that mean to you? Who
Mhm.
cares about fitting into pants? Oh, well,
Mhm.
these pants were, and suddenly you're like, oh, well, there was this night that I remember when I was 25, and it's the best
Mhm.
night of my life. And I was wearing these pants, and 6 different people told me how good I looked.
Mhm.
Excellent. So you were happy and confident and sexy and all of these things. Let's go for that rather
Mhm.
than art. Like you can lose weight, but if you get there unhappy and unhealthy and unsustainably, then we're just going to bounce back. And I suspect if you're talking to me to begin with, you've already tried that a few times.
Mhm.
So why don't we find something that's actually going to work long term and make you feel good instead of continuously beating yourself up for this
Mhm.
completely artificial goal?
Mhm. Yeah, that self flagellation is really, really hard to overcome. Now, the other thing I really like that you're talking about is it's not like, okay, we're going to change this all in a few sessions here. It's baby steps because you can't just decide that, okay, I want to get back into shape and now I'm going to do it like really quick. So I'm going to hit it as hard as I can. That's setting you up not only for failure, but also for injuries.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons that we tend to work in these sort of mini cycles, we call them.
Hmm.
And a lot of the time we will test something, let's call it week one.
Hmm.
If you have 6 movements in a day, two or
Hmm.
three of them will probably be some kind of a test. Move this weight as many times as you can, or walk this far, for this distance for time, or something like this. Then the next 5, 7, 8 weeks, whatever, we'll be building on that, building around
Hmm.
it, looking for
Hmm.
strength, endurance, stamina, all of these things. Dip back, we call it week 8. We're going to retest those things again.
Mhm,
Same weight, but now how many times can you do it? Do
mhm,
and find those things. And the vast majority of the time, if I'm doing my job, which I like to do, we see improvement there.
mhm,
And that's a way you can point to it because
mhm,
what you said is correct. This is really a long-term game. And
mhm,
anyone who, if your listeners can think of someone who you're like, well, that person is in shape or strong or fast or
mhm,
healthy, that is years and often decades in the making. So
mhm,
having these smaller sections where you can look at improvement over 4, 6, 8 weeks and like, oh,
mhm,
I'm getting stronger. I'm getting
mhm,
better. It's right there. I could only bend my ankle this much. We did 6 weeks of work, and now my ankle dorsiflexion has significantly improved, which is
mhm,
going to help my running, which I say is this big goal. And those
mhm,
being able to show progress, I think, is really important
mhm,
rather than just, as we referenced earlier, show up, go through the motions, go home, and you
mhm,
don't understand what's happening. And you don't have the indication of that progress. You don't
mhm,
feel like it's working because you're not a
mhm,
radically different person. So being able
mhm.
to point out these baby steps, I think, is really, really important.
So basically, you're teaching them self-awareness as well as fitness and health. I mean, and that is a huge, huge key along with the mindset.
It's gigantic. I honestly believe that the education component of what I do is
Mhm,
certainly more important than any single movement, exercise, or workout. My true goal, I say this all the time, I want to build autonomous clients. I want
mhm,
you to not have to need me at all. You could
mhm,
go write your own perfect program. You understand how you work, how your seasons work, how when you slept terribly and ate
mhm,
poorly and maybe had a drink last night, why you should adjust your workout differently than when you feel it slept amazing and your
mhm,
relationships are all lined up and you feel like a lion, how you should also adjust your workouts a little bit.
mhm,
I'm happy to be wanted, but I prefer to not be needed as efficiently
mhm,
as possible.
mhm. It's very empowering.
That's the idea. That's the hope. And then hopefully those people can go off and they don't have to become coaches, but
Right.
just the way they act and the way they behave and the way they carry themselves is also good for those around them and
Mhm.
enriching everyone they come in contact with.
And that is, I think, the true definition of confidence and health and fitness.
Absolutely enormous. Being able to
Mhm.
uplift your community just by being the kind of person you are.
Mhm.
That's one of the ways that we will often talk about goals is, oh, okay, you want to, whatever, squat 100 pounds. How
Mhm.
would someone who can squat 100 pounds act? How would they sleep?
Mhm.
How often would they drink water? What would their
Mhm.
recovery look like? Why don't we
Mhm.
act like that kind of person? You're not that kind of person yet, but let's
Mhm.
act like that kind of person. And that will
Mhm.
start you moving in the right direction. Because if you act
Mhm.
like a person who's never going to reach that goal, then that's rather likely what's going to happen.
So you're talking about something that I love to talk about, but you did it kind of like in a very sneaky ninja-like way, which I really appreciate that, is you're really talking about changing the brain patterns. You're changing the way you think about yourself, which then the brain is continually taking in that information and helping you get to that goal rather than, oh, I'm never going to get there. Well, yeah, no, you're never going to get there. But when you can see yourself as that person of what you're trying to achieve, then it's a lot more attainable.
Absolutely. The mindset component is gigantic. The
Mhm,
visualization component is enormous.
mhm,
We do a fair amount of breath work with people
mm,
around like, you know, taking your nervous system out of that sympathetic state, that fight or flight state, which can certainly come on with danger. We want it with danger,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
A bear is chasing me. This is fight or flight. I strongly suggest flight, and you get out of there. If you're just feeling bad about yourself or anxiety from work or
mhm,
relationships, or you're walking around with your shoulders up around your ears, entirely breathing in your chest, starting
mhm,
to be able to recognize that, drop into some nasal diaphragmatic breathing,
mhm,
consciously adjusting your nervous system and how you're responding. And that will let you deal with these situations better as they come up. The next time
mhm,
your boss yells at you,
mhm,
you're already going to have it. You're going to start subconsciously just dropping into that nasal breathing. I'm not saying
mhm,
being yelled at is going to be fun, but
mhm,
we're going to be able to control how you respond significantly better.
mhm. And just while you were talking about that, all of a sudden I felt myself take a deep breath.
Right?
Easy breath. I don't know if you saw that, but yeah, it was just like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, calm, because it makes a huge difference. And even your breathing patterns. Do you talk about that when you are teaching them exercises? Because I always tell people who will look at me and they'll say, "Well, what's the right way to breathe?" And as a former respiratory therapist and somebody who's very snarky, I will start by saying, "Well, breathing in and out is a really good place to start."
Right. Yes.
Just
Inhalation and exhalation is non-negotiable.
yes, do not hold your breath. And then I will always recommend, exhaling with the effort, because when you're trying to exert a certain amount of effort, if you exhale, that helps make it a little bit easier. And then you are going to inhale.
Yeah, 100%. And I would even say it depends on exactly what we're doing. Like
Hmm.
I will have people entirely exhale through the entirety of a movement,
Hmm.
especially if we're working on pain desensitization, especially if we're
Hmm.
working on particular bracing patterns. If you're in a
Hmm.
powerlifting meet and you're a competitive athlete who is trying to squat the most, we're going to Valsalva maneuver. We are absolutely going to like create
Hmm.
as much tension as we can for about 8 seconds to move maximum weight. Is it the absolute healthiest way to breathe? No. Is it the way to be
Hmm.
most successful at this particular task?
Hmm.
Yes. So it changes what we're doing,
Hmm.
including like endurance wise. We'll talk about we call it breathing gears. And like it's one of the ways that people, especially people who haven't done a ton of exercise. So if someone's
Hmm.
listening and they're like, well, I want to walk or run or bike, but every time I get started, I'm just out of breath immediately.
Hmm.
One way to control your effort is okay, we're going to start, but we're only going to breathe through our nose. And
Hmm.
you can only go as hard as you can while you can breathe through your nose. Then the next step up, we're still only going to breathe through your nose, but really hard, like
Hmm.
power nasal breathing.
Hmm.
Like make an effort, but and then step 3 is okay, in through your nose, but you can exhale through your mouth. We're
Hmm.
building up. And step 4,
Hmm.
when the hammer is down, all right, open your mouth, go to town. And that's a
Hmm.
great way to kind of regulate breathing for effort, but also take yourself out of that anxiety headspace. Running's too hard, walking's too hard, this bike is getting out of control. I'm not going to stop and get off the bike, but I'm only
Hmm.
going to go as fast as I can with entirely nasal breathing.
So I have a couple of things to comment about that.
Mm.
But the very first one I want to address, are you surprised at how many people actually hold their breath?
Not anymore. When I
Okay.
started working on it, I was shocked. And now
Mhm.
I'm sure this happens to you. Like I'll walk down the street and watch people not realize they're holding their breath walking in the world or
Mhm.
breathing in a very aggravated state.
Mhm. I even noticed with myself sometimes when I was really getting into it, noticing, wow, I'm holding my breath when I, empty the dishwasher. What
Mhm.
is that about? Why am I doing that? And really started focusing on how many times that I would hold my breath. And it was just really amazing. And of course, I would think that I would be more aware of it, but that was a very eye-opening experience. So for my listeners, start doing that. Notice how many times you do hold your breath because it is an eye-opening experience, and that breathing can change your life. Which brings me to another point that you were talking about, which was the pain desensitization. Now, if our listeners are hearing that and they go, what do you mean you're going to breathe and the way you breathe is going to help bring down your pain level? So if you want to address that, I would love it.
I would love to. So again, we're trying to manipulate your nervous system. And
Mhm,
one of the ways to think about this is the fact, and this occasionally upsets people, and I don't mean to upset anybody, but
mhm,
pain is entirely emotional. Pain is
mhm,
pure emotion. It's you get information and it's how you choose to respond to that information. That
mhm,
doesn't mean that whatever is hurting you right now doesn't hurt,
mhm,
but if it hurts a lot, if you're wincing, if you're holding, if you're sitting
mhm,
down very suddenly, these are essentially emotional reactions. So
mhm,
setting yourself up for how you can deal with that will literally make it hurt less. I'm working with a
mhm.
client right now who's about 6 months post a major back surgery. Like
Ugh.
we are building up to being able to pick something up off the ground, and truthfully, we're at least weeks away from it. It is a
Mhm,
very significant issue.
mhm,
And right now, we're doing some really controlled, really targeted hinging, bending at the waist,
mhm,
and they are only exhaling throughout the entire movement, only through their nose. So they
mhm,
start, they brace, they take a few deep breaths, and then they start exhaling. And we have them count it. And it works on a couple of levels because that
mhm,
nasal exhalation tells
mhm,
your nervous system that things are okay. The
mhm,
sympathetic nervous system can take some time off. We're going to go parasympathetic. We're
mhm,
relaxed. We're sitting. And it's also something for them to focus on.
mhm,
So she's working on doing an 8 count exhalation through her nose as
mhm,
she hinges for just the briefest moment. She gets to
mhm,
not think about what her back feels like, which is how
mhm,
she's spending a significant portion of her day these days.
mhm,
And we'll do, 6, 8, 10, 12 reps. Great. How
mhm,
did that feel? I didn't feel my back at all. Like I felt other
mhm,
muscles working, but I actually didn't feel my back. And that
mhm,
that really controlled, especially like the nasal exhalation through effort, can be
mhm,
gigantic for pain desensitization.
mhm. Excellent. Great points. I like to tell people that pain is a powerful teacher.
Yep.
And what we typically want to do is we want to run away from it. But if we kind of embrace the pain and dance with the pain, we can learn so much about our bodies and so much about the healing process. And we've got all of this information going on toward, we can apply to the rest of our lives.
I love that. Pain, yes, we're not denying pain. We're not saying it
Hmm.
doesn't exist, but
Hmm.
it's not in charge. You get to be in
Hmm.
charge. Pain is a
Hmm.
servant.
Hmm.
Let the pain serve you.
So since you already opened up that can of worms, I'm going to just dig in and let a few more out. Because when you said that, pain is emotional, and a lot of times, I used to hear it, and I know a lot of people hear this, it's all in your head. And in some way it is in your head because it is a neurological response. So it's not that it's in your head, you can't be hurting. Of course you can. But now, just with what you've explained to us, I just want the audience to realize that you really do have power over it. And you can take control. You do not have to be at the mercy of your pain, but you can be the boss of it and take over.
Exactly right. We're not saying it's a hallucination. It is
Mm-hmm.
the information that's coming in is the information that's coming in,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
you can actually take more control than you think and start
Mm-hmm.
choosing how you react to it.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I wanted to ask you, this is a little bit off track, but not really. Did you ever read the book titled Breath?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. I just finished reading it recently. My sensei actually was reading it, and he was talking to me about how fascinating it was. And he's going on and on and on, and he's explaining things that's like, well, as a former respiratory therapist, I know that, but okay, maybe I could learn a little bit more. And I found it absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. And I also thought for people listening, let me know what you think, but I thought it was pretty accessible. Like I feel like the average person could absolutely get through it.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
the other thing is, not only it's accessible because some of the information that he's talking about is very deep, advanced physiology, but he explains it in a way that the typical layperson can understand it. But he also enhances everything with stories.
Yeah.
And
Which is
some of,
honestly how I prefer to learn anyway. I'll remember any story you tell me. If you give
Mhm.
me a chart of numbers, oh, all right, I'll try and memorize it.
Oh, God, I mean, that's just so painful. I have a friend who just loves spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are her thing. And everything is in a spreadsheet. And she says, you need to, and then she'll send me stuff in a spreadsheet. And it's like, Polly, don't do this to me. I'm just going to look at this spreadsheet, either throw it out or try and rewrite everything in longhand and make it so it makes sense to my brain.
Yeah, I'm glad people like that exist because I need them to help me do things, but it
Mhm.
is definitely not how I work. That's why I love the podcast format as opposed to just publishing, long screeds because I can talk forever about this stuff, but if I
Right.
have to break it down to a chart, I start really losing interest.
Oh, I would rather have a root canal, honestly. And just the thought of it makes me just cringe. It is just not my learning style. So let's talk about aging because we mentioned that a little bit quite a while back. And as you know, I'm an advocate for the punching father time in the face and telling busting the myths of aging. So do you get people of a certain age? I mean, I am of a certain age. Um, so talk about that. If you get somebody in their 50s, 60s, even their 70s.
I treat them like any other person,
Mhm,
meaning that we start figuring out exactly what they want and then
mhm,
assessing them head to toe to figure out what they're capable of. The
mhm,
answer is almost always, in my experience, with people, let's say over 55, the answer is almost always more than they think
mhm,
because they are typically, I mean, I'm happy they showed up. So they've already taken a
mhm,
huge step of either
mhm,
getting in touch with me online or in person and deciding
mhm,
to do something about it, and then it's carefully pushing, safety first, of course, and
mhm,
recognizing that there are some things that change with age, right? Like
mhm,
I can't undo arthritis
mhm,
because your bones have literally changed shape. There's nothing I can do. It is way outside of my scope to change the shape of your
mhm,
bones. However, I can make you stronger, more stable, more durable, more resilient. I can make those joints moving feel
mhm,
much better. So
mhm,
your arthritis, while it still exists in the same degree it existed before, now you don't feel it.
mhm,
And that's a massive change. And people will, especially if people have had a lot of exposure to the medical system lately, there's a tendency for people to kind of become their diagnosis. I will
mhm,
I will meet someone who I thought their name was Jason, but it turns out they're just a bulging disc. I'll meet
mhm,
someone who, I thought it was Heather, but it turns out that she has arthritis in her shoulders. And I'm
mhm,
like, oh, well, you're not arthritis in your shoulders. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. This
mhm,
is something we can absolutely deal with if you're interested. It's not easy, it's not super fast, but we can make
mhm,
huge changes here. But I
mhm,
also need you to become Jason and Heather and stop being a
mhm,
bulging disc walking around on two
mhm.
legs.
This is why I love talking to you because I mean, you're just, singing my song. I just love it because I that's one of the things that drives me crazy is that people do become their diagnosis. They become their label. And, it's not I'm not putting the blame on them, but when they hear that over and over again, you have arthritis in your knees. My husband had terrible knees for a long time. And when he first went to an orthopod, it was like, okay, we're going to do bilateral knee replacement both at the same time.
Oh my goodness.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. And, and he's talking, told him everything they were going to do, and we'll do it right away. You should have had this done years ago. So my husband comes home, tells me the PT. Oh, and he was really excited that my husband was married to a physical therapist. So my husband comes home and he tells me all of this. And he says, oh, yeah. And he was really happy that, you're a PT. So, you can help rehab me. And I'm like, okay, we need to really talk about this. Number one, if you want to do both knees at the same time and you want to do this, I completely support you. However, I am not that kind of therapist. I am not going to do your rehab. You're going to have to go to a rehab center for 2 weeks. He's a big man, he's 6'4". We need to talk about this a little bit more. And there are a lot of other alternative things you can do. And we
Exactly.
actually were able to put off his surgery for over 8 years.
That's awesome.
And by the time he finally said, okay, it's time, we did one knee at a time. And the technology in those 8 years had changed so much. I could not believe this, Justin. He went home the same day. Oh,
From a knee
yeah.
replacement.
Yes.
Wow.
And when, he went to it was a new doctor, the one who initially wanted to do both knees at the same time was retiring. So he got a younger guy and, just did one at a time. And when Mike came home and says, okay, this is what we're going to do, it's going to be at the surgical center. And, I'm going to come home the same day. And of course, my reaction is, no, you're not. No, 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 no,
I
no,
don't
no.
think
This is
so.
not, no, this is not going to happen. And I mean, I was on pins and needles. I could not believe it. They had him just a few hours after the surgery, walking in the surgical center, working with the PT. As soon as he was able to go up and down stairs, they discharged him. It
Yep.
was a phenomenal recovery. And then he did the second one about 18 months later. So that's a little bit of a point to the audience. If you can put something off, it's well worth it. And you can work with people like Justin who can help you get the range of motion, decrease the amount of pain. No, the arthritis isn't going to change, but you are actually getting a lot more mobility. So if you want to address how that happens in the joints, because people are thinking, well, how does that happen if the joint already has arthritis? If you can explain the physiological changes with your gentle movement, what happens there, that would be great.
100%. And just to button your story with your husband, like if someone is thinking about that, you'll notice neither one of us said you shouldn't have surgery. That surgeon doesn't know what they're talking about.
Right.
Surgery is a miracle. However,
Yes.
recovery is really hard. If
Yes.
you can go into surgery as strong and resilient and ready to recover as possible, then you are
Yes.
so much more likely to have a good outcome on the other side.
Mhm.
The same is also to be said for pregnancy, by the by,
Mm.
which is why
Mhm.
people should continue strength training basically as long
Mhm.
as they can, because stronger, more resilient, more capable going in, it's so much easier to recover on the other end. But we're talking joint health. Joint health, there's a couple of different things that could be going on. A lot of times it has to do with connective tissue and with tendons, ligaments, things like that. And it's not it's simple, not easy to make those things stronger. Like the
Mhm.
short answer is heavy, slow resistance protocols at medium to high volume. Now,
Mhm.
that may not sound like anything, but if not knowing your husband, having never watched him move, so I'm going to make some stuff up. He was like,
Okay.
but my knees just hurt, like they hurt all the time, and it's worse when I wake up, and it feels a little better when I get walking, but it's just both knees kind of all the time. Excellent. We're going to do a quick assessment, watch you move, and then we're going to squat to a 20-inch box. We're going to take
Mhm.
4 seconds to get to the box. We're going to take 4 seconds to stand up, and we're going to do it 12 times. And then we're going to repeat that 3 more times. That is
Mhm.
a ton of time under tension and a ton of squatting. But we'll
Mhm.
also, assuming we're doing it with beautiful form, if I'm standing in front of him, we will,
Mhm.
we're going to drive blood to these connective tissues. And that exact protocol has been shown over and over again to literally make tendons stronger, to literally
Mhm.
make connective tissue better. This is also counts for anyone who's walking around. If you've become your meniscus tear or something like that,
Thank
it's
you.
fun. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's okay. You're walking around. There's lots of people who have all of these things that they haven't seen on their MRI, and they are
Mhm.
completely asymptomatic. I
Mhm.
can't untear your meniscus, but we can make
Mhm.
it far stronger. And
Mhm.
most of the time, I think surgery is the last option because it's
Mhm.
such a big deal and it's so much to come back from
Mhm. Mhm.
that if we can put it off, if we can do other things, ideally to negate the need for it. But if we
Mhm.
can even forestall it and make your recovery better, it
Mhm.
is well worth your time.
Mhm. Um, that's really, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's one of the things that Mike did do, was something called, I don't know the technical term or whatever it was, but it was called super slow, something like that. And it was 20 minutes of, so you do know what I'm talking about. So he did that for quite a long time and got quite a bit of relief. And his muscle tone in his legs, very strong legs. He was a basketball player, baseball player, very athletic and skied for years, which, kind of explains some of his arthritis because he didn't do the
Yeah.
stretching and stuff. But that really did make a difference. So, you're talking about you get the blood flow to the joint but it's more than just the blood flow, isn't it? Isn't it like the oh God, like maybe the lymphatic flow and even, you know, the fascia? Because we used to think that fascia, the connective tissue, was just
Mhm.
something that separated muscle and muscle fibers
Oh, yeah.
and bundles of muscle. Even when I was in physical therapy school, which was what, 26 years ago, you know, it was just dead tissue. And it's like, oh my God, think about dead tissue in your body. And now that, you know, we know a lot more, that they are actually, that fascia actually is living tissue with a lot of nutrients and a lot of powerful healing capacity in it.
Absolutely. And you can even utilize your fascia to help with movement and recovery. There's a
Mhm,
concept called generally it's referred to as slings or movement slings basically, but
mhm,
there's bands of fascia that
mhm,
let's simplify this. Basically, let's say bands of fascia run across your body in an X in both your front and your back. It's more
mhm,
complicated than that, but that's an easy way to think of it, from like
mhm,
the top of your leg to your opposite shoulder, front
mhm,
and back. So pulling this rotation as your it's one of the reasons amongst balance power that
mhm,
really powerful runners, when they bring their left knee up, they drive their right arm forward. They don't even have to think about it because they're natural athletes. We're actually utilizing these fascial slings as well as
mhm,
creating balance, power, explosiveness, all of these things. Fascia is fascinating, and what you say is correct. It wasn't that long ago that people
mhm,
thought it was, you know, essentially a mistake or a filler or something.
mhm. Yeah, there's I took actually classes ballet from a woman who was just absolutely fascinating and brilliant. She had a very extensive background, and she used to call it fascial glide.
Hmm.
So when we would, you know, warm up, instead of doing the traditional ballet exercises and stretches, which, you know, kind of like, yeah, pretty routine and really don't do a heck of a lot, we actually would work on fascial glide and the layering of the muscles. And the way that she would talk about it was absolutely fascinating. And then with the fascial slings that you were talking about, have you ever read the anatomy trains or heard of the anatomy trains?
I, I have it in my bookcase. I have not quite opened it, but I do have
Ah,
it.
it's fascinating. Yeah, I have it in my bookcase too. I have opened it. I've only read a little bits and pieces of it, but it is a really fascinating book and a
I'm
fascinating
told it's
system.
extremely dense. The person who recommended it to me was like, you know, get in 5 pages, put it down, think
Yes.
about what you just read, make
Yeah.
some notes, go back and
Yeah.
read those 5 pages again. So maybe less accessible to listeners out there, but just the kind of
Yeah.
thing that I like to nerd out about.
Yeah. It's, and look at the pictures. Yeah, but it is. It's less accessible to somebody who doesn't have a very interest and background in anatomy, but it is fascinating and the concept is really fascinating. So I like the way that you explained it with the fascial slings, because that really, I think people can really grasp and wrap their head around that.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to work with, and again, can be really useful for people coming back from recovery, especially if we have
Mm,
instability.
mhm,
People who are less stable on one leg, less
mhm,
stable on one shoulder. You can actually utilize these slings and let the strong side basically help the weak side build up
mhm,
strength in a way that
mhm,
is effective and also a little bit interesting. A lot of times, these are things and exercises people haven't done before, so
mhm,
their proprioception starts raising because they've never actually tried to touch this hand to this toe while they're balancing in a plank, and it
mhm.
looks a little funny, but it's awfully effective.
So you're going back to what you're describing, just it popped in my head. You're actually at the same time working on their mindset and taking away that stigma of, oh, I've got this injury here. So
Exactly.
instead, it's like, let's see, instead of this is a problem, let's see how it can work together with the rest of your body.
And again, always moving toward your goals, like
Hmm.
making sure. And if your goals are, I want to be able to go hiking on the weekend with my grandkids, then great. We're going to
Hmm.
make sure that's part of it. At some
Hmm.
point in our workouts, I'm going to put a backpack on your back and we're going to go do something because
Hmm.
this is what it's going to be part of. And there will be some stuff in there that you might recognize from PT or things like that.
Hmm.
But layering all of this in and making sure that it's really specific takes the stigma off that I am a walking injury and also
Hmm.
makes it evident how well this translates to the rest of the world because I'm
Hmm.
honestly a little indifferent on helping people win in the gym. I really want
Hmm.
to help them win the other 23 hours of the day. It's the world that I care
Right.
about.
Right. Because basically that's really what counts, is what you do for the rest of the 23 hours. And you can actually take some of the things that you're teaching your clients, they can actually incorporate that in their daily movement, in their daily activities of daily living is what we call it. And you can actually get more bang for your buck if you're thinking about it and just adding those little movement patterns during the entire course of your day.
Yeah, those are the wins that excite me most, honestly. I had someone 2 weeks ago come in and they were like just obviously excited. I have to tell you what happened. Okay, what was it? I fell on the street. Oh, no.
Nice.
Like, no, no, no. But then I didn't. She tripped over a curb, and 3 months ago this would have been catastrophic. But she
Wow.
caught herself. She didn't even think about it. She reached a hand out, grabbed on something, caught herself, stabilized herself, stood up, was shocked that she had caught herself, and continued on her way. She was coming to meet me that day. She's like, I couldn't have done that 3 months ago. I would have gone down in a pile. And I didn't even think about it. Like, but we've been doing all this balance, stability, endurance, coordination, all of this work that ties together. And it's like, what's better than that? Like, that's worth the money right there. I'm going home.
Right.
I earned my check. This
Exactly.
is perfect.
Exactly. I had a client like that one time, because I'm really big on getting down on the floor every day. Get down on the floor and back up again. That's one of the basic things you can do, to keep yourself mobile. And, I can't do it, my knees. And finally it was like, then don't worry about it. You've made a lot of other progress. Don't worry about it. So she came in about maybe 6 weeks later and very casually mentioned to me that she was getting up and down, getting down on the floor and back up again twice a day. And I
Voluntarily.
looked, yeah, voluntarily. And she never even mentioned it to me because I would see her once a week. And I said, oh my goodness, really? What happened? And she said, well, I remembered you said, just try and do it, however you can do it, blah, 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 and just keep playing with it and practicing. Well, her daughter was expecting a baby. So she wanted to be able to get down on the floor, to play with her grandbaby, when the baby came, and to be able to carry it up and down the stairs. So she was working on strengthening her knees and her hips and all that stuff at the same time as well. So it was beautiful. So it's, there's always got to be a reason. And that was right at the very beginning of what you said. Why? Okay, why? Why? And when you find the right motivation, that's when magic really happens.
And what a powerful goal, because now that person is empowered they can get on the ground and play with their grandkids. So they're super excited. They can be trusted to carry the kid up the stairs. And oh, by the way, getting trapped on the floor and not being able to get yourself up is a really good way to get put in an assisted living home. That's one of
Yes.
like I have paramedic friends, and the amount of time they spend getting called to someone's house to get them off the bathroom floor. And they're like, it's probably the last time. The daughter was really mad last time. I bet I don't come to this person's house ever again. And it's because they've lost their freedom, right?
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to scare anybody. That's not how I like to
Right.
motivate.
Right.
But what an awesome goal. Let's get on the ground so you can play with your grandkid.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, you also have unlocked all this freedom in your life.
Yeah, I had another client who actually became a very good friend of mine, and she was thinking about, moving her laundry room, up to the main level instead of from the basement. And then she said, I remembered something that you said. If you stop doing something, then you won't be able to do something. She says, I run up and down those stairs so many times. And she says, I left the laundry room down in the basement. So she says, I would have to do the stairs.
I love that. Putting it as a daily habit or near daily habit, something you have to do, because exactly right. If you never have to go down those stairs, you won't. And if you don't go downstairs for a year, what makes you think you're capable of doing it?
Right. Right. You either use it or lose it.
Yeah, I'm a coach I know once said you get what you tolerate. And that was sort of
Ooh.
like within fitness and movement and all of those things. And at the moment he was talking about sort of standards in his group class. Like if you as a coach stand at the front of the room and someone, squats with poor form, and you don't say something, you don't at least give them one cue, then that is now what you accept. That's your squat as a coach, because you let it happen in your presence. So that's what you tolerate. And I think the same thing goes for yourself. If, if you're like, well, I'm going to move the laundry because I don't need to go downstairs anymore, then you're tolerating the idea of you not being someone who does not and maybe cannot go up and down stairs, and which maybe is fine, but you should think about how that might ripple through the rest of your life.
In the long term. I really love that. You get what you tolerate. And that sounded really familiar to me. I know I've heard it before. I think it must have been in our last conversation.
Oh, possibly. I do like saying that.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to highlight that. The other thing, okay, last topic that I really wanted to cover because you mentioned it is pregnancy.
Mhm. Pregnancy, I work with lots of pregnant women. I don't call myself a like perinatal or postpartum specialist, but I
Hmm.
have worked with dozens of moms at this point, often with through multiple pregnancies. I
Hmm.
will say at this point there is uh, irrefutable evidence that, especially if you are already exercising and strength training, you
Hmm.
should keep exercising and strength training basically as deep into pregnancy as you can.
Hmm.
Typically, I have a little guide I send people who are pregnant when they tell me, and I don't know if you've had this experience. As a trainer, I'm often the, I guess, third person to know, right? The person, typically their partner will know, and then I get told long before the rest of the world gets told, because
Hmm.
they're like, am I supposed to adjust anything? Is this safe? What are we doing?
Right.
And the vast majority of the time, first trimester is, no, we're good. You can do absolutely everything. Second trimester is still pretty good, and we start really keeping an eye on comfort more than anything else.
Hmm.
We take out anything potentially catastrophic. So
Hmm.
if you're in the kind of exercise routine where you might jump on a box, we're probably not going to do that anymore.
Hmm.
We're not going to climb ropes or something
Hmm.
like that, just because nothing where you could fall, basically.
Right.
But even moving at intensity, stuff like that is absolutely still on the table.
Hmm.
We take a really close eye on squat depth and things like that because they have
Hmm.
some hormones kicking around already where they can squat a little deeper than they could before. So it's not necessarily a great idea to go as deep as possible with things like
Hmm.
that. And then third trimester, I mean, it's so individualized at that point, and
Hmm.
it's not even person to person, it's pregnancy to pregnancy, and
Hmm.
really day to day, week to week.
Hmm.
But there is a ton of evidence, including at this point, ACOG, the American College of Obstetrician and Gynecology,
Hmm.
like in their rules or recommendations, it is yes, strength train,
Hmm.
exercise as deep into pregnancy as you can because the results are so much better and the recoveries
Hmm.
are so much better on the other end
Hmm.
that it has now been proven. Where even 10 years ago, doctors were telling pregnant women to not lift 5 pounds or to not exert themselves and all
Hmm.
these frankly things that had nothing were based in no kind of fact and were
Hmm.
holdovers from like guidelines from the 1800s when doctors were
Hmm.
worried about women becoming hysterical. It was still kind of treating pregnant women with white gloves in a way that is offensive and patronizing.
Hmm.
Um, and I am again not a medical professional, but I am married to an OBGYN, so I know
Oh,
something about
wow.
it. Yeah, I've got a cheat code downstairs.
Okay. Well, in ballet class over the years, we've had a lot of ballet dancers coming in, pregnant, danced all the way through until the very, very end. I actually had took class with one woman who was taking a point class, so in the point
Yeah.
shoes. Yeah, and we were all like, trying to, and the instructor it was a man, and he was like really uncomfortable with that. And she kept saying, I'm fine, I'm fine. And she was and I'm using air quotes, older woman, for being pregnant. So I think she was close to 40 and had never been pregnant before. So she took the point class and went home and went right to the hospital because the instructor was so afraid that she was going to have the baby, like right in class. And he was just having a fit, but no, I'm fine. And so he was just so happy that she went home and had that baby and it was all over with. But, she did fine. And she was back in class so quickly. And it seems like all the other dancers were back pretty quickly because they were in such incredibly good shape and so strong. And, if you can do point work, I guess you can have a baby pretty easily.
I mean, point work is amazing, especially doing with like a changing center of gravity and weighing
Mhm.
more for obvious reasons and all of that. Like that just sounds like a lot to manage.
Think about that because, every week to week,
Yep.
your center of gravity, your balance, everything is changing so much. So, yeah, it was a lot, but obviously it worked for them.
Also, a fine example: postpartum moms will compare themselves to them 18 months ago. You're like,
Oh,
you're a different. Something just happened. Were you aware? You're a
something
different person
significant.
now. Like we can absolutely work toward your old goals or new goals or whatever, but we're going to reassess and find out where you are now and then get going because you are quite literally a different person than you were.
Jeez, no kidding. Well, Justin, this has been so fun talking to you. I absolutely love talking to you. Where can people find you? I want you to give links to your website, social media. It is of course going to be on the show notes, but I just like for the guests to have the opportunity to say it out loud.
I appreciate it. The website is feelstrong.me. And if you want to find me on social media, Instagram is really the place to go. And it's at feelstrongfit.
Mhm. And let's talk about your podcast. Include that.
Of course, the Feel Strong Fitness podcast. It's a mix of me solo and me bringing on experts like Cheryl to talk about the things that they do best. Comes out every Monday, available on all wherever you buy your podcasts.
Awesome. Are there any final pearls of wisdom that you want to share with the audience before we sign off?
Recognize that wherever you are is a perfectly fine starting point. One of the biggest hurdles people have is they feel like they need to get fit or get out of pain or get more time or make more money, or when this next thing happens, then I can really like take care of myself and make the change I want to make. You're already in the place. This is the starting line. How you choose to deal with that gun is up to you, and there is no judgment either way, but you're in a perfectly fine place to start, especially if you find someone who is willing to work one-on-one and treat you as an individual and a complete human being, and not just a collection of sets and reps.
Excellent. Excellent. And I just want to reiterate that you do work with people one-on-one in person, and you do work remote.
In person and online.
Okay, so everybody knows that. Justin, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
This is always a joy talking to you, Cheryl. Thank you so much.
And everybody, thank you for listening. I really appreciate you. And do check out Justin's website and his Instagram page and his podcast. He does have some fabulous guests on the show. And I'm not saying that because I was one of them, but I do have a little bit of bias there. And wow, he's given us so much to think about. And just remember, I think I just love what he said, that, where you are is always a good place to start, and just keep on going. You just always have the chance to improve yourself at whatever age or whatever is going on with your life, and movement is magic. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.